Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this month's Innovations webinar. My name is Fernando and I come with the Region 9 Head Start Association, and I will be your webinar host today. So feel free to contact me via the chat option of Zoom with any logistical questions you may have regarding audio, video, or any connection issues you may experience throughout today's session. This webinar will be recorded and made available for on-demand consumption after today. You may find this recording and other resources up on our website, www.region9hsa.org. We encourage your participation today, so feel free to send us your questions via the Q&A option of Zoom, or simply click or select the Raise Your Hand button next to your name, which will allow your microphone to be unmuted and speak directly to the entire room and our panelists. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our topic for today, Developing and Growing the Workforce of Tomorrow, presented by Pamm Shaw and Camilla Rand. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pamm Shaw. I'm with the YMCA of the East Bay Early Childhood Impact, and I'm here today with Camilla, and we're going to go through a couple of things about our programs and how we are developing and growing the workforce for today and tomorrow. And I'm sure that most of you have some ideas and thoughts about how you're doing what you're doing, and I hope you'll have an opportunity to share those with us during the next hour as well.
Okay, and we're looking forward to spending this next hour with you. This is Camilla Rand with Contra Costa County Community Services. And before we get started with our presentation, we want to know a little bit about our listeners, so we have some questions to ask. First question, we just want to find out a little bit about who's listening. So if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to fill that out. All right. Go to question number 2.
71% grantees, no delegates, we've got a bunch of others.
All right, we have some others. That's interesting who those others might be, mostly grantees. Okay, next question. So we just want to know a little bit about what programs you might have. So just take a minute to fill that question out. Okay, see what we've got. Okay, so half of you, or 50% are doing some sort of apprentice program and teacher training programs. Wonderful. All right, so many of you are already doing some of this. Next question. Okay, so we want to know how many are working with local colleges. Okay. All right, so fee-based classes quite a bit, none, and other, and some on-site coursework. Okay, that is helpful. Next question, I think we have one more question. Okay, and this is around working with your local colleges. Okay. All right. Most of you are working with your community colleges. Okay, and some are none of the above. So we're hoping that this presentation will be helpful. All right, let's move on. Okay, so I think it's no surprise to anyone that finding a qualified workforce is just a growing challenge. And this is a nationwide challenge, this is a statewide challenge, and very much localized. For us in Contra Costa County, where we both have programs, we see shifting demographics from one part of the county to another. The workforce is moving to where housing is more affordable and where possibly neighborhoods are safer. We continue to compete with the school districts. We've just learned that one of our local school districts has increased their teacher salaries by 10%, and now they're the highest paid district in the county. So we continue to compete with our school districts as well as other programs. And then minimum wages, as the increases have continued, we're competing with local businesses. We just recently had one of our staff say, you know, I'm moving on to go to Macy's because I can make more at Macy's. So, and we're going on our 4th year with a strong economy, low unemployment rate. So it just continues to strain programs like ours. Okay, next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we're here to talk about some key programs. We know and we learned from the poll that many of you are doing some sort of training and apprenticeship program, but this is one that we are most excited about and really want to showcase. This is something that Pamm and her program have really started from the ground up. I want to talk a little bit about our teacher assistant trainee program and one of our student intern programs as well. Next slide. So, you know, we say that it takes a village. It truly takes a village to grow a teacher, just as it takes a village to raise a child. So we'll be talking quite a bit throughout the presentation about many of our partnerships, but really you just can't do it alone. So you'll hear about partnerships with First Five, the Private Industry Council, many labor unions, several colleges that Pamm will specifically be highlighting, workforce development boards, the Chancellor's Office of California, and several nonprofits. Okay, next slide.
Let me just step in for a little bit. We have a comment from Maria Gonzalez. She just wants to say that we use Childcare Education Institute for our training as well as teach. We give the teacher a bonus once they have their degree, and also they are allowed 1 paid hour per week to work on the education. Thank you, Marie, for your comment.
Wonderful, thank you. Next slide.
So that's a perfect segue into describing our specific apprenticeship. About a year ago, we were funded by the California Chancellor's Office of the Community College District at the state. It is a CAI grant. It is a Chancellor's Apprenticeship, Innovative Apprenticeship, Apprenticeship for Innovation, something like that. And through that grant, we have a partnership with LA Trade Tech, the Peralta District, mostly with Berkeley City College, and with the LA Trade Tech. While we're not in LA Trade Tech hosts a variety of apprentice programs, and part of the partnership with them is that they have the capacity to offer classes anywhere in the state, and any college can offer a class through an apprenticeship program once we become an official apprenticeship program. The goal of the apprenticeship is really to transform early childhood from being viewed as a dead-end job to being a real entry point into a sustainable career path. Part of that is the salaries have been so low, and when you're looking at an apprenticeship, you're typically looking at going through a period of training, and then after the training getting a substantial salary increase. With us, you get like $1 more an hour. That is not considered substantial by apprenticeship standards, and we're really looking at that and how we can create something that's more sustainable in early childhood and really pay people what they're worth, which means changing major systems. We're looking to develop professional development programs that recognize the tension between the increasing professional requirements and the lack of money to be able to pay professionals. Most of you on this are driven by federal and or state funding. It's not like we can raise tuition in order to do that, to raise funding to pay higher salaries, and or we don't want to get to the point where we keep cutting children to pay teachers more, even though we know that it's a possibility with that start funding to do that. Next slide, please. We're looking at evidence-based, economical, scalable models to use that use a collaborative, comprehensive, and state-of-the-art approach. It sounds like a lot of words, but what we're really trying to do is improve the quality of the teacher, meaning the instructional professional development leader, with the teaching staff, with the line staff in the centers, increase the preparedness of the workforce while increasing compensation without putting financial burden on parents. I already talked about fees and things like that. Next slide, please. So our apprenticeship program is set up with 3 tiers. We received about $1 million in funding in partnership with SEIU, LA Trade Tech, and the Chancellor's Office. Oh, there it is, for innovative apprenticeships. But it is CAI, not CIA, so I'm not sure how that plays out. It is 3 tiers. The entry level is the first 12 units and an associate teacher permit. Second tier is an AA degree. Third tier is a BA. I'll talk more about that in a minute. There is support through mentoring and coaching, and this is playing out in Alameda, Contra, Costa, and LA counties right now. Next slide, please. So our target groups are state-funded preschool and Head Start programs. In LA, there's also a group of licensed family childcare providers. We are targeting low-income workers, serving low-income children, unemployed and underemployed Head Start and state-funded parents, and other low-income community members, usually referred by our collaborative agencies. So we've got workforce development referring, CalWorks referring, people in public housing because we advertise there, so they're referring families or they're referring participants. And a lot of it comes through word of mouth, through the Head Start parents talking up in their networks. Next slide, please. Right now, across the state, we have 44 center-based teachers, 156 Head Start teachers and parents, and 122 licensed family child care providers, both in Alameda and LA counties. So 322 people are participating in this apprenticeship program. Next slide, please. In our Head Start apprenticeship program, we have 30 center-based teachers, 34 Head Start teachers and parents, and 34 licensed. This is not the same thing. We've had 108 graduates to date, and the BAAA group is expected to complete in 2019, next summer. We're hoping June, but it's probably going to be August because people are still taking some of the required classes to catch up. This is a combination of numbers from from both programs in LA and Alameda County. Next slide, please. So the model was designed based on aligning with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing for permits, with the federal Head Start requirements and the CDE early learning system. It's aligned with class. It's providing on-the-job coaching and mentoring. The college coursework and supplemental supports are paid for. Wage increases and stipends are tied to achieving milestones. So once somebody has gotten their permit, if there's a position open and they are eligible for it, they will be put in that position and earn more money. Next slide, please. So we talked about the 3 tiers. The tier 2 are incumbent and associate teachers. They're currently working for either our program or an affiliated program of SEIU. They are in a range of the tier 1 completed people, or the coming in as tier 2. They are all current employees of our program, or as I said, another related SEIU or close to SEIU agency. And then tier 3 is a group of 21 primarily Head Start teachers in 3 different programs with the Y, with Unity Council in the City of Oakland, Head Start programs, and they're all working on their BA degree with Brandman as a cohort group to do this. Next slide, please. Tier 1 is aligned with the associate teacher permit, and as a result of taking their 12 units, they will leave with a permit as well as the 16 hours now of health and safety, including CPR and first aid. So they're classroom ready to be an associate teacher by the time they get in. All of them have 3 units in infant toddler development, so they are fully prepared and qualified to work in early Head Start. And most of them are doing some kind of either practicum or spending time in early Head Start classrooms as well as Head Start rooms. So they're getting the range of birth to 5. Tier 2, they're on an AAT track, like an Associate of Arts in Teaching, and will be leaving there with a teacher or master teacher permit by the time they're done, and any other kind of auxiliary health stuff that they may need. And then the Tier 3 is the VA master teacher. Most will have the site supervisor permit by the time they finish, or some of them will actually have be eligible for program director permit. Next slide, please. On this, we are partnering with YMCA of the East Bay, Contra Costa County Community Services Bureau, Camilla's program, the SEIU Early Educator Training Center, SEIU Local 1021, LA Trade Tech, Berkeley City, Brandman, and Contra Costa colleges. It is a lot of work coordinating all of these people and players as we go through this. Next slide, please. The Chancellor's Office grant is great, but it does not pay for everything. And so in addition to that, we've got some Workforce Accelerator funding, which is through grants and contracts with SEIU and labor money. It is Department of Labor money, I believe. Local resources that are supporting this in addition to that, our First 5 has been awesome in funding some of the college classes, particularly infant toddler classes. The community colleges are putting the classes on site, so they're located in either a Head Start center in Contra Costa or Alameda County. We also have Private Industry Council, which is also workforce development, additional workforce development money, and the county offices of education are working with us, like using AB 212 funds and things like that. Next slide, please. So the biggest success that we've had so far is this apprenticeship is now registered at the state and the federal government, so it's an official apprenticeship. Once people complete all the requirements for the apprenticeship, they will get a certificate from the state that can be used anywhere in California. It also allows us to apply for directly for workforce development money as an on-the-job training program, which we're hoping will bring in some sustainable funding. We're trying to set up the models so that they can be replicated throughout the state or country for that matter. And we're also setting up an evaluation over the next year to really look at what the successes and outcomes have been. We're hoping that, ECE becomes a viable sector for apprentices and other workforce development. It's mostly, when you think of apprenticeship, you think of, plumbers and car repair people and things like that. You don't think of early childhood people. But there is a lot of money in workforce development that we hope to be able to tap into to help us, fund these models more and better. So next slide, please. We do have, more successes. We've actually brought together labor, employers, and colleges to do this, and people are really interested in this. We haven't really talked to anybody who's said, oh, this sounds like a really bad idea. So what we're hoping is that as a result of this webinar, we'll have more of you on board and can do something, more coordinated statewide. The Tier 1 pipeline for the new workforce, we have a wait list for both the Tier 1 and the Tier 3. And of course, on the way, people have to stop and get their AA degrees. But because of what we know now with the Tier 3 group, people need to come in ready. Just because you have an AA degree in early childhood does not make you ready to go for a BA program. And what we found is it's the general education classes that are holding people back. And a lot of our staff do not have time, nor the inclination, nor the feeling of success to be able to take those classes. So the Tier 1 group is we have 32 people that have finished, and they're all employed in one of our programs now or at another early childhood center. And then the wage increases are being brought into the professional development planning as well. Next slide. We are not without our challenges. As we move forward, we're looking to see what do we really need to do to make this work. There are so many rigid definitions and requirements of who can be an apprentice, how the programs are structured, how the wages are structured. And we're trying to work our way, we're wading our way through those things and making some good strides with that. The time to review the apprenticeship, the paperwork that goes with it is pretty cumbersome. And this is in addition, I mean, we're all preparing PIR now. When we're looking at our PIR data on employees, it's, you know, we've got 300 plus employees that we're trying to track in various programs and funding sources. And then to do this on top of it is a bigger challenge. We're actually working with the workforce registry from the state and trying to get all of our people in the workforce registry. And they have actually said that they would help us prepare some of the reports that we may need for this. So that's really exciting. The other thing is there's so many inconsistencies and rigidities across the colleges and the nonprofit agencies in terms of costs and calendars and requirements and being able to hire adjunct faculty and boundaries. One of the things that we're looking at is we want faculty that look like the staff. We want them to be familiar with our population. We want them to know what trauma-informed systems look like so that they're presenting the work in early childhood from that perspective and really focusing in on what our people need in order to be successful in these programs. Next slide, please. We're also looking at ongoing funding for long-term sustainability. Our funding on this particular grant goes through June 2019, so we are out there hunting down funding to keep this going. One way or another, we will figure it out, but this has been such a gift for our community that we can't not continue to do this. The other thing is it is hard to go to school if you are working full-time. And our people are taking classes every night, all day Saturday, and the only way we can help them is providing the support that they need in terms of childcare, study time, helping them through the paperwork chase, tracking down all of the paperwork that they need to just register for classes, getting waivers for things that they're not prepared to do themselves, and feeding them whenever we can, because that seems to help, because people bring their kids to the childcare, but it's like, oops, I forgot to bring dinner. And they're there till 10 o'clock every night, and that is a long day for anybody. And what we keep reminding them is, in 18 months, you're going to be done with most of these programs. You're either going to have an AA degree, you're going to have a BA degree. You are just moving so far, so fast, and it is paying off really quickly. So I'm going to turn it over to Camilla now to talk about what they're doing in their program, and then I will talk to you all later.
So before we move on to the next slide and I talk about our our TAT program, I just want to speak from a perspective of being a partner with this TAP program. We're going on our second cohort in partnership with YMCA and Contra Costa College. And we started last year, and it's had some bumps in the road for sure, many of which Pam spoke about. But one of the biggest things I think is important to note is that because it is such a fast track for our staff, and they're working all day, they're getting on the job training in the classroom during the day, and then they're coming to class in the evenings. And actually we were able to host the classes at one of our centers. They really they need some ongoing support. And so what we did this past year was we hired a case manager / tutor who could really work one-on-one with our participants to help them just get through some basic needs around, some other things that might be happening while they're trying to go to school, work full-time, and raise a family, or whatever else might be going on. That was really helpful. And what we've done now is we've built it into our collaboration with the college. And so now the college will be hiring someone this year who will work as a tutor and support for the cohort. So that's something that we really felt that without this one-on-one support, it's really hard for these participants to be successful. So many of them are entering school for the first time. They've never been in school. And so this is also very new to them.
And more than half speak a language other than English as their primary language too. So that's also been a challenge and a struggle for some of them to do all the work in English.
One of the other things I want to mention around this program is that we have been able to give each of our participants a laptop to loan, which has been very helpful for them. And so on the first class, what we did was just gave some basic presentation and Microsoft Office 101 tutorial, and this is how you use a computer, this is how you can do your coursework and do presentations. And so having that technology for them has been very, very helpful, because as Pam was saying, in the past some of the participants were doing the work on their phones, and you just can't do a PowerPoint presentation on your phone. So anything else?
No, we'll catch it later.
All right, so next slide.
Let me just step in for a minute. We do have a few questions in the Q&A, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, sure.
The first question is asking, can you tell us which 2 programs are doing this in Los Angeles?
Yes. Let me think about it, and I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay. Second question is asking, we need
Betty's program, if you know who Betty is.
Betty,
are you
family childcare?
They're doing family childcare, and they're doing some center-based stuff from the same agency. Think about it.
The second question is asking, we need this apprenticeship program for home visitors. Does anyone have experience with that?
There is somebody looking into that right now as part of follow-up on some of this stuff. There are actually, with the whole home visitation program stuff going on in California, they're looking at a model like this as well. So we can keep people posted and let you know when we find out more about it. But I'll get the names of the programs in LA. If somebody, my email address is at the end. If they email me, I'll put you in touch with the LA programs.
Okay. All right. So our teacher assistant trainee program, this is something that we've been doing now for several years in our program, and many of you, I'm sure, are doing something similar. This program is really ideal for candidates wanting a slower track. So the teacher apprenticeship program that Pam talked about is really a fast track. It's moving very, very quickly, and which is wonderful and what is needed. And this is for those who just can't or don't want to go so quickly. The goal is, the immediate goal is to get an associate teacher's permit by the end of the 18 months coursework. And it's, the same concept as the TAP program, receiving paid on the job training. And this targets our parents and other low income individuals in the community. Next slide. Next slide, thank you. So much like the TAP program, our participants are in the classrooms with teachers and master teachers. They receive ongoing evaluations and feedback. So it really is just like an apprentice program. Childcare, reimbursement for childcare, books, college parking, and tuition are fully covered. Laptop loans as well. And the big difference is that the participants do go to school. They go to school on their own. This isn't a cohort model. They go in the evenings after working full time. Next slide, please. And so right now, at any given time, we have anywhere from 30 to 40 teacher assistants actively working in the classrooms and in the program. They're anywhere within their 18 months of receiving the 12 core units that they need to become associate teachers. And we're really proud that 150 trainees over the course of several years have successfully completed the coursework. Okay, next slide. So something new that we have started this year, we used to actually do with Contra Costa College, but this is a pretty costly program for the college, so the funding went away. But now Diablo Valley College, which is one of our other local colleges, has started doing this program. It's called the Linked program. It's called ECE Linked. And it's the same model as the trainee program, but with an ESL component. So just as Pam said, our participants really English is not their first language for the most part. And so what happens is these individuals through the college receive an English assessment to see where they need to be placed before they can start taking college coursework. So if they're ready to start taking early care and education courses, they are put into what is called a linked course. And so it's a cohort model, and the participants go through the coursework with a Spanish-speaking, right now it's Spanish-speaking, a Spanish-speaking tutor who sits through the coursework with them. They do the coursework 2 nights a week, and then they do the tutoring and the study work together 2 nights a week. So they're in school 4 nights a week. It's pretty intensive, but it's stretched out as well over a full semester. And if they're not ready for the linked coursework, they are put in ESL classes in the local adult school that has a direct link and partnership with Diablo Valley College. So again, it's cohort learning. They're receiving on-the-job support, and they get, rather than a tutor and a support through us, they work with the college advisors to meet their academic needs. Next slide, please. Okay, and I'm sure also that you all have many, many training programs. I know that one of the things Head Start is so strong at is community collaborations. And one of the student internship programs that I wanted to just touch upon is not related to ECE, but it's related to building a highly competent clerical pool. And Community Services is also the community action agency for the county. And so we have an Economic Opportunity Council, and they have invested their time and energy in building this clerical assistant program. And again, it targets low-income individuals who are looking in the end to have full-time employment. And again, it's designed for low-income individuals joining the workforce for the first time, ideal for our parents as well. Next slide. And so some of the things that make this program unique, and I'll talk a little bit about the Metrix learning on our next slide, but we've partnered with our local workforce development board to support the participants with what new workers or dislocated workers might experience going through the American Job Center programs. They come to us and they set goals. They receive on-the-job training, and we work closely with the Workforce Development Board to provide some supports that I'll talk about in just a minute. And Opportunity Junction is an employment agency nonprofit in our area, and what they do is they send individuals to us. So we have a partnership with them. And again, it's funded by our Community Services Block Grant dollars and our Community Action Program. Next slide. So one of the things about the Metrix learning is that this is something that the Workforce Development Board has designed to support unemployed and dislocated workers. And it's an online learning program. It has over 5,000 courses that can be tailored to anyone based on what their learning goals are. And so each individual who comes they develop a learning plan around what it is they're interested in doing. They're they're designated a buddy in our administrative offices. They do peer counseling through the American Job Centers through the Workforce Development Boards here in this county. And at the Workforce Development Boards, there are lots of wraparound services. So some of the things we found is that there's a lot that comes with you know, going to school and working full-time for the first time. So there's a lot of wraparound support services that are needed. And we've done workshops on professionalism, time management, trauma-informed practice, and we've had a pretty successful permanent employment placement rate. So it's something we're pretty proud of. Okay, okay, next slide.
We're going to do this one together. We're kind of bounce back and forth between the two of us. There are certain things that we found that actually support success more than other things, and probably the first and biggest, and Camilla addressed, you know, talked about not doing it in one program and doing it in another, is we found that small cohort groups of about 20 to 22 students really work. They have each other's back. They break down into smaller groups based on, you know, what center you're working at or what you're working on as an activity or group projects. It has been one of the better things that has happened, particularly for the BA students. I think they would feel lost if they were doing this by themselves, and so many of them hadn't been in school for 10, 15, 20 years, and now they're going back and getting their BA degrees for the first time. It's shocking to them, like how much work it can be. And the big thing for them was the technology. They just didn't know the technology initially. And so until they learned it, they were struggling in the classes. So the big piece is the fact that they're working together and then learning this stuff together. So that was really good. The support services, we could not do this without childcare, without the tutoring, without transportation need be, without food, without other wraparound services. What we found is, you know, when you're dealing with low-income families trying to do this, people have lost their housing while they've been there. People have been living in cars. People have been living in other assorted places. It has been a struggle, and yet because of the cohort support and other support, they've stayed in school and they've managed to keep it going and found resources as a result of being in school and being with other people. The embedded tutoring, and Camilla addressed that earlier in terms of what Contra Costa is doing, where the tutor is actually going to be attending the classes, again, makes a huge difference because they're learning with the students, and most of them are former students in these classes that have been extremely successful. And so for them, it's sharing their resources and wealth, and they understand the topics really well.
And I would add that one of the really successful pieces is allowing for a cohort study group on Friday mornings. We provide a printer for them if they need to print out their presentation. They come together as a group and study together, and that's been really positive. They really appreciate that time together on Friday mornings, away from the classroom, just being able to be together without actually being in the course.
Yeah, and for us, unfortunately, ours are happening on Friday nights and Saturday mornings. So there's tutoring almost every night of the week at one of our sites, which is kind of in the middle of the service area of where people are coming for the classes. So they're making their way over there, but yeah, it's hard. But they are there on Friday nights and they are there on Saturdays coming in. The BA people are meeting on Saturdays, so there's childcare happening that day. So it's a good day to come because the building is kind of hopping on that day as well. All of the instructors, at least those in the AA and BA programs in Alameda County, are now meeting with an instructor before they actually start teaching and talking about the trauma-informed approach and what that means. And they're doing this because people were coming in and saying things like, well, you can't eat dinner in the classroom, it's not appropriate. Well, if they didn't eat dinner in the classroom, when are they going to eat? They're working till 5 to 5:30, 5:45, they're rushing to get to a class by 6 or 6:30. They're picking up their kids in the middle, they're getting over there to be there on time. I mean, it's not even realistic to say something like that. And when they're coming from that aspect, it's like, these are the rules and we have to stick to them. It's not going to work for this population. They can't wait till they get a 15-minute break at 9 o'clock or 8:30 to eat their dinner. It's not going to work. We talked about the technology. Camilla talked about, we do computer loans, and they're nice computers. They're not, you know, things that you want to throw away. The BA people, once they finish the BA program, actually get to keep their computer. So it's still only going to be a year and a half old, so it's not like it's useless, and they're actually getting like Surface Pros, so they're really nice computers that are incentive for people to keep them and do well with them. The other thing we're doing is we're tracking every single grade. So as people start falling below C grade, they have mandatory tutoring. We're in the process of hiring a success manager. And so this person's role is going to be to do similar to what the person in Contra Costa is doing in terms of case management of the students and tracking their success, with the whole goal of, the goal is to finish and be successful. The on-the-job support, the training and the coaching, we're still working on fixing that so that it really has a smooth flow. I think some of the times we're confusing the ongoing coaching that we're doing as part of Head Start and class with the coaching as a new employee and somebody who's on the job being trained, and whose job is it to train them, and looking at providing head teachers a little bit of a stipend for meeting with people and actually providing a little bit more support than they would for any other new employee. And then we're doing monthly trainings and bringing all the new employees together and talking about basic stuff like licensing and health and safety and what to see in a classroom. Yeah, well, you want to add anything to that? I just
would add that it's really been critical to stay connected with the Contra Costa cohort with the instructors at the college, so that we really get a sense early on of how the participants are doing. And now with this built-in coach / tutor, it's going to look a little different, but this last cohort was really about just checking in to see exactly where we are with progress.
So we're actually having all the students sign FERPA releases, which is the confidentiality release, so we can share grades and other kinds of information about the students that are taking the classes. And the students are all signing because they want to be successful. And the only way that we can guarantee success is if we really know what's happening early, instead of waiting until somebody's struggling at the end of the class and then it's too late to do anything about it. And we learned that really quickly after the first set of classes, because it was, the people that were struggling could not get it back at the end, and it took a lot to bring people around. And a lot of it was around struggling with technology, and how to do a PowerPoint presentation, how to write a paper that's grammatically correct. And some instructors were more harsh on the grammar than on the content. So working with the instructors around some of those things to make sure that people weren't penalized for having a lack of adequate preparation once they got to the classes.
And last cohort, we each of our senior managers volunteered their time to go during study time and be available to proofread papers, to proofread PowerPoints, so that they can just have that extra set of eyes. And the participants felt like that was so very helpful.
Okay, that was great, thank you. Next slide. So what are we looking to do in the future? More cohort groups. What we're doing this fall is the cohort in Contra Costa will have a 20-hour-a-week tutor / case manager. She will attend the classes with the students. She's bilingual Spanish speaking, so she'll be able to work with a large group of Spanish speaking population of students that we have in that class, those classes. We've pretty much put any staff person that we have that doesn't have any units on notice that they have to get 6 units by January. So in 2 days, 37 people signed up for classes. And they thought we'd been kidding all along, and now it's come down to the wire, so they realize that they're actually going to lose their jobs if they don't sign up for classes. So that was one incentive that's working really quickly, and hopefully people will be successful in doing it. But we see the need to do that, and we're splitting the cost with the college. So the college is picking up 10 or 12 of the hours, and Camilla's program and the YMCA are picking up the difference. Mm-hmm. We're looking at embedded tutoring in all of our classes in some way, shape, or form. There are some students who are just really soaring and doing well, and others who are struggling in some of the classes, so we're looking at using the students that are doing well to help other students as we set up study groups and things like that, and that seems to be working. People really want to help each other. They're not competing with each other, and that's something that we've seen in this program that's somewhat really pleasing and really attests to the power of the cohort as opposed to the power of the individual. It really has made a huge difference. We had mental health consultant assigned to our first cohort group, and then didn't have funding for it. The person wound up leaving, and then we are looking now at, this is a kind of a non-negotiable thing. We need a mental health consultant assigned to the project because there are so many issues for so many of these students. We hope that having a success manager is going to help, but they need to be able to refer to a mental health when things get really serious. And the consultants that are working in the classroom really need to focus on the children and not the staff issues, although they work with the staff on staff issues, but some of these issues are beyond what needs to be addressed in the classroom. All of our staff, if they're full-time employees, have insurance, so they can take up, get mental health services through their insurance, but they mostly have Kaiser, and that's not exactly user-friendly sometimes in terms of getting the help that they need. We talked about training all of the instructors in a trauma-informed system, and that has become very powerful as we see. We had a math teacher from Berkeley City College who actually we're contracting with separately to be a tutor in math because he believes so much. He was volunteering his time to tutor because he believed so much in what we were doing and really wanted people to succeed. And math is just one of those classes that our staff just struggle with no matter what. And once they get it and understand it from from an early education perspective, they're understanding it. And the instructor really needed to use examples that were real life based on what they experience in the classroom, not like, if 3 trains are going 20 miles an hour and one stops, how fast are you going to get to the end? But if 3 kids are running on the playground at this speed, what happens? Are they going to bump into each other or not? Or just kind of taking the information and putting it into context. We're also trying to put together a statewide model that partners workforce and early learning. And there's a whole lot of work going on now, both at county levels, local levels, and at the state level. And we're trying to pull a statewide group together with the Office of Head Start and the Early Education and Support Division and the Department of Education with First Five to talk about this and how we can make this work, these kind of models work, and taking the best and the brightest from each of the models out there. So we wanted to leave time at the end to have either online discussion where you can unmute and talk about what you're doing, or ask questions, and we can go from there.
And I think the only thing to add is that if anyone is interested in being a part of the statewide conversations, just to let either Pam or myself know, and we can go from there, because wouldn't it be wonderful if we could make this a statewide initiative? We've heard from some of our colleagues around the state that they're really trying to build and implement this with their local colleges and workforce development boards. So let's work at making it a statewide effort.
So somebody asked, who's providing the childcare and how is it financially supported? So good question. All of these services are wrapped around with Head Start and state funded dollars. All of the participants are working in our programs, so we're using a combination of funds to do it. We've got the grant money from the grant that's paying for childcare. We've got some Head Start, early Head Start dollars that we're putting into it, especially supporting parents that are in this training program. So we use a little bit here and a little bit there, a little bit of everything.
And I would add that as we started registering our staff for classes, we found out that many of them qualify for what are called BOG waivers. So their tuition is often waived if they are if they meet the qualifications, and most of our staff have. And so we actually have spent less than what we budgeted for because we've helped them work through this application process, which is really important. And you know, we have E-rate dollars, so that supports our technology. And then we offer overtime for teachers who are willing to do childcare for the children.
We did the same thing.
Comp time or overtime. So are there any other questions?
So the other thing I was going to say is what we're trying to do is recruit people who want to work only in the evenings, because it's great to be able to pay people overtime, but they're burnt out and they're tired. And it's really hard to, again, to work all day and to work again at night, but also, you know, be in classes at night, work all night. So we're actually looking to recruit staff that work from, say, 12 to 9 with an hour break instead of, you know, the usual like 8 to 5-ish or 7 to 4-ish. And that's been good. And this success coordinator that we're going to be hiring is also going to be working from like 1 to 10 is going to be their regular hours, and 4 days a week during the week, and then they'll work on Saturdays. And then when the classes aren't happening is when they're going to spend their time going out to the sites and following the apprentices and students into the classes and making sure that there's carryover into the classrooms there as well. And also making sure that the coaching is happening the way it should be.
And some of the participants already have childcare providers, and so even just the reimbursement for that is easier than finding someone on staff to do it. Okay.
Anybody else have a program that they want to talk about that's working really well that they want to share?
Okay. Are there any others? So it looks like there are no other questions or comments. So with that, I guess we're done. And here's our contact information. And Fernando, did you want to add anything?
Yes, thank you, Pam and Camilla, for the wonderful presentation. I see that a Q&A comment or question just came in. Let me just take a look. Oh, Mary Cruz Aldana just says thank you.
Okay.
It doesn't look like there's, we still have a little bit of time. If anybody wants to throw in a few last minute comments or questions, feel free to do so. In the meantime, I want to remind everybody that this session will be recorded. So if you came in late or if you would like to revisit some of this wonderful information that Pam and Camilla shared with us today, the recording will be made available at our Region 9 website, which is on the screen. Normally, it will take a few hours for it to process, so make sure to stop by maybe after tomorrow, and that recording should be ready to watch. If there's no more, I don't see any more questions on the queue. So I just want to thank everyone again for attending this month's innovation session. I want to thank again our presenters today for their time and knowledge. I would like to remind you that these sessions happen every month, so keep checking our Region 9 website to stay up to date with all the sessions coming up, and to make sure to add them to your calendar and to not miss that wonderful topics. Again, thank you to Pam and Camilla. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.